Hello humans, hello humans. We're talking about something very ephemeral, very solid, but very ephemeral, and that's money. We live in a transaction universe, and we have two parties, A and B, and they want to do a deal. They want to trade something between them, and B wants to trade a boat for A's apple farm, you know? And so they trade, and B becomes A becomes B, they have the goods, etc. No money involved, right? Money is a technology that allows barter or trade to be carried forward in time. So that is the definition of money. In that sense, money could be anything. Could be dollars, wands, euros, could be a yap, stone. So anything that allows you to carry the contents of a barter through time can be considered money. Digits, you know, whatever, right? So you have your little card, you go, you've got some transaction you want to do, you've obtained, you've purchased, you've gotten the digits or the money, and that allows you to go to a burger place and give them your card, and they give you a burger for some digits. And so money is a good technology. We like money. Money is a very interesting and fun thing for humans to have because it facilitates the growth of society. Because without money, you're limited to barter, which restricts you to where the hell you are and getting all of the stuff done that way, right? You can see that money is a convenience. It's an easy technology, and it's a time technology because you can acquire the money, and then you have the need or the want for a boat, but none's available. You can acquire the money, and then you transfer that need or want through time by having the money and being able to buy the boat later. And so money is useful stuff. But here's the thing. Most human, okay, so in the United States, we don't really have in our school system anymore, it's deliberate. They've taken out virtually all education about economics, home economics, household economics, anything, unless you're going to become an economist. And then they have a weird schooling system that teaches you all different kinds of things that are really not pertinent, but that are system reinforcing if you want to become an economist or get into that sort of thing, right? Traders and all these other people are different kinds of critters. You just don't really go to school to trade stocks. You may do that, but there's no, stockbroker college course kind of a thing, right? So no pathway to doing that. So we treat money in a very odd way. We don't educate about it, and thus people get into trouble with it. This is designed. This is part of the bugs fucking around with our society. They want this to occur because if we were educated about money, we would use it in an entirely different way, and we wouldn't be so easily duped about money and what it is and how to work it and so on. So money in and of itself is not a thing to desire, right? In a barter, you rarely say, I want money for money's sake, right? You never want money just to have the money and let it sit there and rot. Or get the silver and bury it in the hole in the ground. The point of the silver is that later on you will trade it for some wants or needs that you're moving through time with the currency. Okay, and we have current events, we have electrical current that implies speed of motion and now, and the idea of a current in water is the flow of it, not a stationary thing. So all of these ideas are about transferring your needs and wants and the ability to meet them through time. And so money is a time instrument. Money is a time technology. Now, we know this in many other ways. Money has this issue with it of interest, okay? but it also has the attachment of debt, both of which are intimately connected with time. So we have an ability to grow money, which the growing of money is an interesting concept, all right? So, you would see this in the 50s and 60s, oh, I've got my money at work in such and so, right? And so the idea was that you would get more money by just having money, that somehow your needs and wants, the species, the currency that allowed you to move your needs and wants through time, the gratification of those, that somehow that currency could magnify itself, just off doing something, or off there. Well, and it sort of works, right? Because the idea is that if you have a resource of money and you put it to use, in essence, you're loaning it out to somebody that then uses that money to satisfy their resource needs, and thus they've moved it through time, but they're going to pay you back with more money for the use as a time for moving it forward for them. So basically, when you put money to work and you're loaning it out to somebody else, they know that their wants and needs are way the fuck out in the future. But they're thinking, okay, if I can move my wants and needs closer to me now, I'm willing to pay more for them. I will use more money to shorten the time involved. Okay, and so that's basically what you do when you put money at work. You loan it out to some other company or person or whatever who agrees to pay you back more of it in exchange for having the ability to use your money right now, as opposed to having to use their own money that they're going to have to work hard for, et cetera, later on. And so that's the whole concept of debt, is that debt means that you as the lender get more of it, and they as the borrower shorten the amount of time that they have to wait to satisfy their wants and needs. And so that's basically our economic system in a single graph, right? Now, it's complex as fuck. There's layers upon layers upon layers. They've got debt so well defined that there's whole new language you have to learn just to understand what kind of debt they're talking about and how it applies, and the machinations and the nuances and the slicing and dicing of it all, the refinement of it all, right? But basically, this is all the concept. My wants and needs, time, and the ability to move it forward or bring it closer to me based on how I handle money. Okay, so now we come to this point where this was great. We started off with the barter economy, and yada, 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 yada. Thousands of years later, here we are with a very sophisticated time management technology that we call money. And money, by the way, has multiplicity of form. So money can be any number of different kinds of things, and many times you will be dealing in a money transaction, but because the language is being used and there's seemingly no money involved, there's no species, there's no currency, you lose track of the fact that you're actually in a transactional money-based system, right? Okay, so we come up to this point now. We're very sophisticated guys. It's 2022. And we have all of these ideas out there that are running around in the blogosphere and polluting the blogosphere, in my opinion, corrupting the thinking of people. But they're able to be corrupted because they don't have a grasp, because they've not been educated in the nature of our transactional universe, the nature of the species that we use to accomplish those transactions and to move them backwards and forwards in time. Which, it's basically, I'll sell you a burger now, and I get $5 or whatever for the hamburger, and I put the $5 in my pocket, and then I'm actually, by doing the labor of making the hamburger and putting all the ingredients together and having a satisfied customer and getting the $5 for it, I'm actually turning my labor through that $5 and some other dollars and so on into something else later, into some satisfying a want or a need later. So my labor now is sort of a kind of a time travel for my wants and my needs, right? And then if I come across a lot of money somehow because of some smartness I have or something, then I can use that money to bring forward wants and needs that I may have now in terms of their gratification. Now, this needs to be harped on because you have to understand some things. Because people have had no education in our transactional universe and species and wants and needs, times, etc., we end up with this shit that is central banking. Okay, and it's basically described as Western private central banks. Okay, so I'm going to put that up here as private central banks. All right, so that's bad thing number one, right? So all the nations that have a private central bank, which we do, the Federal Reserve is owned by private individuals, not by the government, not by the people, and it's an instrument, it's a vehicle for creating debt that is put on all of the people that live in the United States and handle our species, because they put the debt on the money, and thus anybody who deals in that money automatically acquires debt to the central bank. And so they're an evil fucker, right? And so the central banks have to go. When they started this country, we went through this is the fourth episode of a private central bank in the United States. All of the three others have failed. All of the three others beggared the country. They made us all poor and brought us to the conditions that we're in now, right? Because they polluted the money with debt. And so they all collapsed. And so this time it's going to collapse, but this is a good point in history because we're going to collapse all of the central banks. This whole central banking club, the cabal, that when people reference the cabal, all of these kind of words for the bad guys, for the collection of the bad guys, they're really talking at their core about the central banking gang that runs all of the planet. And this is under attack now, and they're dying. They're fighting a defensive retreat now because these guys are basically the deep state. So when you think of the deep state, you're thinking of the people and the institutions that support and run and provide for the central bank to keep us all as debt slaves. So these are evil fuckers. They're not your friends, right? Do not be deceived in any way, shape, or form. And if they're going to give you money, there is something that is attached to it, which is a debt, and you owe interest for them giving you that money. So understand that right off, okay? Now, we have a bunch of very hopeful people that have not ever been educated in money, have no sophistication with it, and they're being sold a whole shitload of falsehoods. And these falsehoods are the Gesara, the Nessara, which are global, supposedly this is a national system to give everybody everything that they ever wanted in the way of money so that all of their wants and needs can be instantly brought forward because they'll have enough money to buy everything. And Gesara and Nessara are these things where the con wants you involved in it, they want your mind thinking with it, and so they want you to do things like, just like with the Iraqi dinar scam, okay? The Iraqi dinar scam wants you to constantly think about and keep your mind occupied on it so that you don't allow any other negative thoughts about that scam, and they do this by having you concentrate on these humanitarian things that you must present to the bank when you get your supposed free money. Now, when in reality has money ever been free? It's never ever been free. There's always debt and interest attached to it, but this is a level of scam that goes beyond the central banking. And it is taking advantage of people that have never been educated on this. And along with this, we have the quantum financial system that Charlie Ward and Simon Parks and all the connecting consciousness places and all of those kind of guys pimp out. Bear in mind that even Charlie Ward will tell you that the whole idea of the quantum financial system is that everything in the world is going to be digitized and put into a computer so that they'll know who owns everything. Somehow this makes a difference. I don't know how it's supposed to make a difference. And I don't know where that computing system would be that you could ever do this, nor do I know where you could get the approximately 4.5 trillion people that would be necessary to do the digitization and put all this shit into code and then actually digitize the data and so on. We just don't have the humans around to do that. Because Charlie Ward is talking about digitizing every fucking tree and all of this kind of shit. He's just full of it. But all of these things here, are preying on individuals that don't understand you cannot create money from nothing. There's the other one too, that's the Saint Germain Trust, right? Trust. This is supposedly the trust that financed the United States, that has all of the money in the world, something like 10 umpty Googleplex dollars or something, because they've had money earning interest since the 1700s. That's the rationale here. Okay, so think about that for a second. They are saying that ever since the signing of the Magna Carta, that there's been money put aside and that someone's paying interest on it, and that they now have 10 gazillion dollars or $1 trillion or whatever. They can finance the whole fucking world off of the Saint Germain Trust and give us all money. Well, the instant they do that, because money is an issue of scarcity, the specie itself is scarcity that allows it to travel to make the transactions travel through time. Instantly, as soon as everybody has everything, it's worth nothing, right? So if all of the streets are paved with gold, gold is a rock. It is not money at that stage. You can go out and pick up a chunk of gold out of the street, but who's gonna give you anything for it? Because they could go and do the same thing. So it is scarcity that allows something to be a species to travel through time. And so not very much scarce about dollars. That's why they're not doing very well traveling through time. A whole lot is scarce about silver. That's why it's doing really well in getting things traveling through time, but it's suppressed by the central banks, because if they didn't, it would do so well that it would show that their offering is shit. And you should, it's too crude, but this stuff here is worth exactly as much as a square of toilet paper. It's paper, right? And so now we deal with the concept of scarcity applied to everything on the planet, because scarcity is what drives human. It drives our wants and needs. If we could say, I want a ice cold pop, and it instantly popped and appeared in my hand, like magic kind of thing. If we could do that, then our social order doesn't need money. We don't need any of these kind of technologies, etc. So it is the scarcity of things relative to our wants and needs that drives this entire system. All right, so these things will never happen. The Saint Germain Trust has no money. It doesn't exist as these people claim. All right, because here's the thing. They're saying that somewhere they put that money aside in the 1700s and they've been adding to it. Well, where would you put such money? Would you put it in a cave? If you're putting it in a cave, who's paying interest on it? Who's putting down interest on it? Because you're not loaning it out to anybody. Oh, maybe you gave it to a bank. That's it, you gave it to a bank. The Saint Germain Trust put all their money in a bank in the 1700s, and that bank's been paying interest out ever since on that money because it's been loaning it out in this thing. Well, the problem with that is we don't have banks that have been in existence from 1700s that have anything near the amount of money being claimed by the Saint Germain Trust. And if the Saint Germain Trust had that kind of money, then it would have all of the money in the world and no one would have any money whatsoever. Just the way that it works, because it's a scarcity thing. Saint Germain, there's no bank that has survived. There's no banking system that has survived all the wars and all this kind of shit since the 1700s. We've collapsed banks repeatedly. In the United States, we collapse our banking system quite routinely. We had the collapse of the first central bank in I think it was 1830s. Maybe it was earlier than that. Then we had the second central bank try. It ran 19 years. Then we had the Dixie banks in the central part of the U.S. There was another private banking system. It lasted about 22 years. We've had the Federal Reserve. They've done really well with that. It's lasted over 100 years. But it's long in the tooth and it's dying now. There's no purchasing power left in here. There's so many of these things flooding the planet that they're worthless, right? You can just pick them up off the street. So this is the understanding of money. Okay, so now Gessera and Nacera are supposedly these things where hundreds of countries have signed this document saying that they will liberate their people from the debt instruments and give them money to do all this kind of stuff. And sure, they can give them money, they can give them dollars, yen, whatever, but it won't be worth anything and you won't be able to buy anything because it is scarcity that allows shit to travel through time. So you actually now are in an interesting position. You have to take non-scarce items, digital dollars or digital yuan or whatever, to buy scarce items because you know that this is real money. So you have an intermediate vehicle that is the debt instrument, and you can use that to buy real money now. This is a very interesting situation. It used to be that you would work and someone would give you silver for your labor. It's been that way through the ancient Greeks, all the way back into the Egyptians, back all the way into the Bronze Age. And, back thousands of years. You would labor, they would give you silver, they would give you species that you could carry forward through time. When we got into paper, they could print as much paper as they want. It changes the ratio of paper to hard specie, to hard currency, to hard money, and it pollutes everything. And this is where we're at now, where they are able to proffer the idea that there are these things, these scams, these are actual illegal kind of scams, right? Nobody's ever going to do this. They're trying to scam you. They're always going to try and get something out of you for this information. They want you all whipped up, and they're trying to get you roiled up to where they can sell you something through these efforts, right? The central bank is a scam, but they're legit because they've ingratiated themselves with our government, and so they've been given the status of producing the specie, the money that we use to make our wants and needs travel through time. And so they are official, but it doesn't make them any less a scam. And they are, in fact, scamming their way by printing so many of these things. They're scamming their way right down to the point where we won't have to deal with them anymore. Now, this is an interesting situation in time, because right now, 2022, we're going to go through a period of time where all of the central banks are going to die. They're going to puke out their guts, close their doors, and go away. This will be very, very, very chaotic. It won't happen overnight. There'll be a lot of chaos leading up to it. There will be major economic blows, crashes, and then at some point, the banks will sort of fade. Now, the good news is we have in place nascent systems that can provide for us the species, the money that we need to make all of this work. And we know so much about the technology now that once we get rid of the deep state and the central banking system, we won't have anybody offering any of this kind of shit. We'll get back into educating people about real money and how money works, and having to work for silver educates you, and you hold on to that shit because it's not paper. It doesn't blow off a tree, so to speak, right? But once we get rid of the deep state and the central banking, then we can concentrate on this aspect of stuff without this aspect. And debt and interest at that point does not become automatic. So there's no debt attached to my silver, and there's no interest attached to it. So if Saint Germain existed in the 1700s, they would have been dealing in silver or gold coinage. We're not dealing in a lot of paper money. There was paper money circulating, but it was not the common vehicle for transactions. And so they could have put all their gold and silver into a cave, but no one's going to be giving them interest. It's not going to be growing, right? So you have to understand all of this shit in a broader context. But anyway, so you could and can loan silver. If you were able to acquire a bunch of it, you could loan it out to somebody, and they could have a scheme, and they could make a profit off of that silver, investing it in wants and needs that then they make goods to satisfy someone else's wants and needs, and they make a profit in the sense of making their scheme is good and they make more silver than back than they cause to be expended on it, then you could take out of that profit interest for loaning in the silver going forward. But in that system, you don't have debt simply by acquiring the money, the specie, that is supposed to allow that trade to transact over time. So this is the evil part of it, right? The minute you work and they give you $1, you're in debt. Because even in 1913, the minute that they printed that first dollar bill, it was worth less than $1. So it had less purchasing power than the face value. And so that was a scam from the get-go. And a lot of people didn't accept them. Okay, it took a long time for the central bank to get the status that it has now. It took it about 15 years. It went through a couple of crashes. They closed the stock market as a result of some shit going on. There was the World War, which really threw everything off. They killed a bunch of people in the Titanic and the Lusitania. They took down a lot of bankers that were opposed to the central bank eating our nation here in the United States. So if you go back and read through the history of all of this, you find out how much evil and death was caused by the central bank just coming into existence, right? And so you know it's not a good thing. So anything that is based on a specie that is going to be controlled by a central bank, which is all of these guys, is a non-starter, because we're getting rid of the central banks and all of these things are fading, and the people that are pimping them, Charlie Ward, Simon Parkes, all these other fucktards, are fucktards. They're there to fuck you over. They're lying bastards, and that's what I'll say. And you know, if you want to go and believe in the Saint Germain Trust, y'all go right ahead, and you'll still be believing as you die, and it will never have materialized. So now, getting back to our current situation and where we're at, the reason for discussing this is that we're going to be getting into some serious banking issues here over these next few weeks and months, because it'll take us a long time to work through all of this. Now, the good news is that we've got people thinking about this shit, right? That really do understand all about money and how it works. And so this is our self-organizing collective, and they've been thinking about this for a long time, and they've got a few ideas. But because we're getting so close to all of this shit going down, this is why we have this very chaotic political stuff. So believe me, the central bank and the people that run it, the cabal, if they could kill Trump, they would do so. They'd do it right now, this instant, never think about it. It would make their lives so much easier. They would still have a shitload of trouble, but that's their thinking, right? It wouldn't solve their problems. They're so short-sighted, they just don't recognize that. All they are grasping for is an extension, okay, an extension of time. A deferral, sort of a reprieve for their execution, right? Just don't kill me now, give me another day, that kind of thing. They're at that stage. They're fighting for existence at that level, because the entire structure of of Mammon, of Moloch, the global banking system, is dying now, and they don't have any of their usual mechanisms for reprieve. Okay, so in all the other times that banking systems have died, we've had massive wars. World War I, World War II, previous wars in the Civil War in the United States. All of these kind of things were engineered by these banking fuckers for their aims, for their ends. We don't have that now. They tried, but it didn't happen because of the self-organizing collective that stopped them and put things, that engineered things such that it couldn't happen. And so the banking system is no longer in control of the planet. The deep state is in kill brackets because it's being attacked from all sides. It is being killed. It's not dying, it's dying anyway, because the money, their banking system is so polluted, they just have run it to the ground, just can't go any further. And we all depend on that, so we're all going to have to do something new, and that's going to mean we're going to have to throw them out. They won't have power anymore, and they're basically freaking out over all of that. So just as a curiosity here, just as something interesting, you see all the Simon Parkes and Charlie Ward, they're all they're like Kerry Cassidy. They're all freaked out about AI, okay, artificial intelligence. They don't understand that any more than Charlie Ward could repair a jet engine, or could even describe how jet engine works. But they're freaked out about AI, and they're touting a system, the quantum financial system, that is 100% AI. That's all it is tying everything to an artificial intelligence system. So they're just a bunch of numbnuts. Anyway, money's a gas, okay? And in that sense, it's ephemeral, all right? It's not, it has aspects of it that are hard, and it has aspects of it that are soft and flexible and malleable. And so the malleable part of it has to go away because we've too long neglected the solid part of it. And we put all of our efforts into the malleable part. It doesn't yield anything. We run it as far as we can as a technology. Now, lots of people are going to be uneducated. They're not going to know about money. We're going to have a social order disruption as the money system, as the central banking system collapses and an economy grows up in its place. We're in the beginning of that process now of the actual collapse. So maybe March, okay, maybe April or May. In there, we should have major kind of problems, or major demonstrations of ongoing problems within the banking system. The ongoing problems exist now, and they're going to ramp up and be very much problems over this next month. You know, we're running at 74% inflation, something like that, hyperinflation. It's going to get to the point where the bankers won't have any choice. They'll do all different kinds of things, but it'll still all be hyperinflation. And maybe we'll get to the point where they're hyperinflating the money supply at 10% a day or something. I mean, it'll just be outrageous, fantastically outrageous. And at that point, the whole thing will start collapsing. So it'll ramp up their hyperinflation, and it'll get up there, and then it'll just collapse. And then that's when the real chaos begins, because there will be many tiers in the social order that won't understand, haven't been educated at all, haven't taken any precautions for themselves, and they will be very deservedly freaking out as the structure of the social order comes under this level of pressure, okay? And so we'll get through that period. And so say that we're in this debt level of period now. And so here we are in January, and we'll just say we're at the 17th, and we'll go through to, I think, May, and in March or April, we'll get this, the initial stage of the actual collapse of the banking structures, okay? So we'll start seeing banks failing, at individual banks that will be having real hard problems in this period of time. But it'll be because the central bank, central bank and the deep state, in this period of time, we're running a hyperinflation curve that will go along, and then it'll just shoot up like that. Now, when we shoot up like this, might not be until sometime in March or April or May. I don't know when this is going to happen. It's not possible to really accurately judge this flow rate because we're in this period right here. We're not able to accurately judge where we are in there because the central bank is hiding so much of the stuff that they're doing. But if we could get access to that information, we could plot this really precisely, because it's a predictable curve that they've got to go on. And I actually think we're right down here. I think we're just about to head up in there, now somewhere in there, right? And so over the course of the next couple of months, we'll head up there. You'll know that you're reaching into this because the cost of buying real money from out of fake money, you'll need a lot more fake money, and it'll just keep escalating really rapidly. So that'll be a sign for you, right? There'll be a lot of other signs economically and politically that this is going down. But what you won't see is anybody coming to rescue you with a Nasara, Gassara, or an Iraqi dinar revalue or any of that shit. Now here's something to think about, okay? You got people saying that the Iraqi dinar is going to go way up. But again, okay, it's just like with the St. Germain Trust. Who is going to buy an Iraqi dinar from you and pay you more than you paid for it? I'm not. The only possible understanding of this would be that the Iraqi government was somehow going to buy that dinar back from you. Now, you can have a situation where the Iraqi dinar revalues relative to the dollar, and so you could have the Iraqi dinar go up in value, but you could only have that if the USA dollar went down in value. So if you had an Iraqi dinar under those circumstances and you gave it to the Iraqi government and they gave you back more worthless dollars, are you ahead? No, because your dollars don't buy as much now as they did when you started off buying that Iraqi dinar anyway. Money revaluation depends always on the constitution of the government, the state of the government that's backing that money. And so all these fuckers point for the dong, for the Vietnamese dong, for the Iraqi dinar, for all of these things that they're saying are going to revalue. Currencies die all the time. We've had nothing but dead currencies throughout history. The United States has had a bunch of them. We've had the greenback dollar, we've had the Dixie dollar, we've had all different kinds of dollars here in the United States, and they've died. And they're collectibles. The Confederate dollars are interesting. You hang them up on the wall, but you can't buy anything with them, right? And so that's the way it is. The Iraqi dinar that you want to have revalued is a dead currency. Nobody's going to revalue it. The reason that everybody says that this could happen is because the Kuwaiti dinar revalued. But the Kuwaiti dinar revalued because the government kicked Saddam Hussein out and came back in and took over the oil wells and so forth, right? So they had assets, the government came back in, so everybody had more faith in the Kuwaiti dinar, and it revalued from its condition having been no faith in it when the Kuwaiti government was taken over and kicked out of their own country by Saddam Hussein. And that was another put-up job by central banks anyway. So anyway, this is where we're at. We're going to be going through this economic chaos in this year, 2022, as we get into 2023. So maybe by December of 2022, we will have a sort of a clear path going forward for coming out of the morass of the dying central banks. I don't know how long it'll take them to die. I don't know if they're just going to give up and shut the door. I kind of think not. Just because it's an organization, you're always going to have people hanging on to the last minute. So it's going to be kind of a disrupted year this way. And the technology of the money has to evolve and has evolved, and we do have the distributed ledger blockchain technology now that can ease our way into creating a new system on our economic needs and wants, right? On satisfying our needs and wants economically. How soon we get that set up is going to be in my opinion, is going to be a function of the social will and the political will. So if you have a strong leader and you got a lot of people with good ideas, you can reconstitute a money system pretty quick, especially if you're dealing with digital. How long it takes the populace to, accept it, and so et cetera, is another issue. But still, it need not take decades and decades and decades because because we have modern communications and we are able to start educating people fairly rapidly. Anyway, so this was just a video about our banks and economics because it's going to be so key and it's going to be so dominating for the rest of the year once it really kicks into high gear. At this stage, I don't think that the deep state is willing to put the central bank at risk in order to tighten political control. So I don't think that the deep state is going to be putting the central bank out to hang out to dry in an ultimate fascist kind of a move. I just don't see that they've got the strength there to even attempt it. That being the case, that would be the only thing that would be able to derail us and jog us off the path we're on as a social order relative to the central banks and the money. And so maybe by the end of this year, we won't have a Federal Reserve here in the United States. I don't know when that'll happen. It might be next year. But this is the year that we're going to start that process of dissolving the central bank and the debt load off of the populace here. And there's another aspect of this. We don't need a GESARA, NESARA, or any of that. You don't need any of that kind of stuff for a healthy and robust economy and a healthy and a robust growing population and a happy population. You don't need any of that shit. You don't need NESARA, GESARA. In fact, they pollute it, right? They're like winning a lotto. Go and look at the history of people that win large lotto prizes. It's very miserable. They destroy their lives in the main. Maybe 1 out of 100 has any kind of really a good response out of that. They've done a couple of people have done books on it, and they'll interview hundreds of lotto winners, and it's like, really, it's kind of boring, or it's kind of sad and depressing. Not boring. But in any event, though, so GESARA, NESARA, quantum financial system would pollute us with free money that we don't deserve, and it wouldn't work anyway because they're still all debt instruments. But what will save the social order and what will save the money technology is the removal of the debt instruments, right? Of getting the central banks out of there that instantly give you as soon as they create a brand new dollar in 1913, it was worth 98 cents worth of purchasing power because there were 2 cents worth of debt attached to it in its ultimate lifespan. Now there's so much debt attached to it that when they print a new dollar, there's less than 1 cent of purchasing power in our dollar relative to the 1913 dollar. So, basically that system's fucked and it's going away. The chaos that's going to be caused can be moderated in ourselves by understanding individually how money works, what you're going to have to do, and educating yourself about what's going on. If you're not educated, you're going to suffer through this period of time. If you understand, basically the system as I've described it, and then how they've managed or how they've manipulated money over time, then you can make wiser decisions going forward, right? And not put your time and effort and so on in all these scams, especially since at this particular time we're in a time of very great stress in the social order, and it's not doing anybody any good to have their energies sucked away and diverted into illusions and delusions about something that they really need to understand solidly. So if anybody comes up to you and says, GESARA, NESARA, Saint Germain, quantum financial system, you know that they're not educated in money, and you can discount anything they say about money thereafter. It's just the state of affairs that you might run into such people. Anyway, guys, I've got to go and get my bread in the oven, pushing forward on my own wants and needs. But it's going to be an interesting